All right, welcome to the Apps on Cloud Summit. I'm Brian Promes. I'm joined today by Brendan Schimmel, and today we'll be talking about how to democratize your network performance management data with advanced reporting and data visualization. Now, before we get into the meat of the subject, just a quick introduction myself. I'm Brian Promes with SevOne and lead our go-to-market efforts. Brendan, want to give the audience a little feedback on yourself? Or background, not feedback. I'll give you feedback.
I think I'm great, Brian. Yeah, so I'm Brendan Schimmel with SevOne, head of product design and user experience.
Right. Well, a couple of housekeeping points for anyone. If you have any questions at any point during the presentation, please go ahead and click on the right-hand side of the screen. The chat QA section. We'll get back to you here with any here during the session. And if we're not able to answer, we'll definitely get back to you afterwards. So don't hesitate to be interactive as part of this session. Now, as part of the really the setup to this session on democratizing your data, first just is a level set, and a lot that you've been hearing about this week at the Apps on Cloud Summit is how applications are your business, right? It has become the way to interface with customers, the way that revenue is driven increasingly through an organization, and gives organizations the ability to establish their footprint into a marketplace and drive differentiation, and be part of the drive toward customer loyalty, and make sure that folks have a good customer experience with those applications. There's the but, right? The but is those applications rely upon a very complex network, where that network is starting back at someone's home with a home router, back through a large service provider, into and out of corporations, where you're hitting the software-defined data centers, you're hitting edge networks, software-defined networks, as you can see, very complex sets of environments underneath. Well, the good news of it is that what we'll talk about today, and what we do at SevOne, is provide continuous network performance. And one of our biggest calling cards that you'll hear about is our ability to deal with high scale, high complex environments, much like you're seeing with all these dots across the screen. But part of that complexity of us being able to gather all this data and to analyze all this type of data comes in. Then how do you drive and enable folks to interact with data sets like this? And this is really what Brendan's going to drive into today, is be able to talk to you about some of the thinking that's gone in based on our experience with our customers about what it means for us to not just take this data in, but present it in a way and enable workflow between data sets for a range of different users in the net performance management space. So, awesome. Brendan, with that, why don't you let you take over and help describe some of the the ways that we can help folks democratize their data.
Cool, thanks, Brian. So yeah, important to note what we're talking about in this slide is just the scale at which SevOne, as a data platform, collects network performance monitoring data. It also creates a big problem where, how do you access all that data or make it usable for people to bake it into operational processes, or just make it accessible? If it's just data being collected to sit on a hard drive and send some alerts somewhere, you're leaving money on the table by not being able to put this to work to help inform a lot of the decisions that are being made with humans in the loop or without humans in the loop, right? So coming from a previous role as a technician, an engineer, as a network planner, and ultimately an architect, what we tried to guide our SevOne data insight, our visualization layer design around was these personas, what our customers need, how they use the data, and what they need to really, in the year 2021, be lethal with their job. We're collecting more and more data than ever. What are we doing with it? How are we, getting smarter about, consuming it? We went after these three kind of personas of like a NOC engineer or a technician that's in more of a surveillance mode, that consumes like standard reporting. It needs to be able to kind of react, after a surveillance responsibility, whereas a reactive engineer or a technician might have a trouble ticket or a customer complaint or user complaint, where they need access to data very quickly and do more temporary analysis that might be super dynamic. And then that brings you down to that last person that's kind of exploratory, that may not have a time bound, but needs to kind of organize, structure, and visualize data to kind of understand it in order to inform a decision, whether that's capital planning or capacity focused, that really drive it towards there. But it goes back to the same problem set of, I'm collecting really good data and I have smart, capable people on my team. How do I enable them to do great things with that data? And that's really what we built the data insight around, was making it accessible to everyone and trying to make it usable just as much. So, barriers to probably making performance data accessible and other tools that we've used is really, it's non-collaborative, where people build their own reports. They can't find their other reports. They build a new report, and before you know it, there's 9 versions of that same report. And it becomes just a mess. The signal to noise ratio is off, and people kind of give up or just keep rebuilding. And only the people that really put the effort in get the value that goes into user proficiency. We shouldn't be punishing a new user off the street or a new engineer that joins a team and saying, all right, it's going to take you 4 months before you get good at this program. Really what SevOne we want to drive is that if you have smart, capable people in the organization, you can embed that operational expertise by using our templating system, by creating these custom workflows with report linking, that if we have capable people that are already known how to troubleshoot this issue or have a surveillance or reporting framework set up, is they can enable everyone on day one to just follow the breadcrumb trail and drill down into an issue without having to know everything about how to use the tool. It's kind of our buffet mentality. You don't know how to cook that food at the buffet. You need to know where the buffet is and how to eat from it, right? So we don't want to. Yeah, go ahead.
Oh, yeah, go quick interruption, Brendan. I was just thinking about the haves and the have-nots piece. And across the personas that you were talking about earlier, is there a certain persona where that have and have-not tends to rear itself more often than other?
I think primarily in my experience, like a performance engineer who's using multiple tools to really do their job across the entire stack, is that they have to be good at a lot of things. And if they haven't come to the tool or SevOne every day, they might not have, where all the bells and whistles are. We try to account for that, the design of exposing things, making them usable, progressive revealing of more and more details. So it's just a click away if you want more information instead of having to know how to create that from scratch. But the actual impact of this is probably worse, right? You can't have parts of the network perform poorly and the excuse be like, well, that team doesn't know the tool well. Like that just doesn't work, right? So how can you level set across the organization to say, hey, when we monitor, a network interface, this is the KPI, these are the KPIs that we look at, right? So there's no definition. It's not poetry, Brian. Like it shouldn't be interpreted. Yeah. Like good and bad should be set across from a high level, right? We can talk about where we get in there. Before we're talking about just barriers to value, just trying to account for something historically where there's a ramp up before people are kind of lethal with the tool set, is really try to flip this around with data insight by being able to ship out of the box a lot of performance reporting and a lot of templates that you can string together to go from a very high level situational analysis, awareness of how the network is performing into a drill down onto, a year's worth of data unaggregated with analytics available. And you don't have to how to create that. You don't have to know that. We can provide that out of the box and you can customize it further. So really, from the persona set we talked about in that first few slides, is the performance monitoring problem set is really about detecting problems, remediating problems, right? Or understanding things that will inform some kind of decision about a larger problem. And we try to provide that progressively by bubbling up high level awareness. And what SevOne does really well is it's policy-based thresholding, where you can put really unique and custom triggering conditions in to expose performance problems or anomalies that need to be detected on top of our top end summarized views. So being able to query your entire landscape very performatively to say, hey, what are the most utilized CPUs on Juniper MX960 routers? Go. And being able to get that rank stacked up, colorized, so you can understand like, all right, these are the ones that are catching smoke. These are the ones that are on fire, and then drive some detailed analysis through the workflow process. So the components of that smoke fire approach I kind of alluded to. For those not in the States, we have an issue with forest fires, Brian. And in the 1980s and 1990s, there was a public service announcement. This guy, Smokey the Bear, his warning to you while he's pointing at you very curiously is only you can prevent forest fires. And what we're looking for is to take the subject matter experts in your companies that know what those limits are, what those KPIs are in the network, and allow them to tune content so everybody else can just act off of that. And you ultimately get to a point where you have active detection in place, where you have performance engineers or a network management system or a performance monitoring system that can find the problems before they become fires, and then ultimately get somebody out there to remediate these things. Going from a very basic approach to performance management, we're looking at the 3 tenets of being performance, capacity, and availability. Is it up? Does it have enough room? If it has enough room, is it performing? Has a mouse chewed on the fiber and we're getting errors in that optical path? These are all things that we got to hit in the middle. So a lot of our reporting and content you'll see is around making sure that these three key tenets are satisfied. Into the DNA itself, we've talked about reports that ship out of the box. These are reusable report frameworks. I lived in a world where you had multiple data centers, and every data center had a special report. And then eventually, those standard reports deviated off from each other. And then, 50 different sources of truth, which isn't great. So what you're able to do with data insight is create that content and then just reuse it. Apply a different variable. If you want to see for your East data center, select the East data center. If you want to see the same report for your West data center, select the West data center group. And that's all driven by core functionality in the SevOne platform of being able to group things logically by regular expression or by metadata that allows you to really carve up based on business need, tier, customer, et cetera. And really this is going around just being able to give flexibility, workflows across the, consistent ability across the organization. And ultimately you're unifying this effort that allows people to benefit from everything. SevOne by itself, it's a ton of pre-built capability that's available for all users. We baseline every indicator out of the box. So that means you're able to very quickly, without knowing a lot about the intimate knowledge of this network, be able to look at time series data, like we're looking at this chart at the bottom, and being able to go, well, what was it looking like last week? What was its historical baseline that we've learned by collecting on aggregated data? And know that it's above the value from last week, it's slightly above the baseline, and it's continuing to trend up. Like all that data is available to you. And this may seem very basic, but if you're doing this historical analysis without this overlaid analytics, you might be looking at 3 or 4 months worth of data and trying to glean some patterns, and that's all smashed together. That's not going to be a fun time for anybody. So really taking what SevOne does in its DNA and exposing that so people can leverage it allows us to build these custom templates. Right here, we're looking at our interface, summary template, where we're going to be able to tell you the basic stuff about an interface. Any active alerts, metadata, is there MAC address, IP addresses, utilization currently, some parameters about the interface like MTU size or interface speed, and then looking at the performance aspect, errors and discards, the availability aspect, is it up or down, and then the capacity aspect on top here. And then you can see at the top of the actual report, we've broken it out into tabs. So going back to that high level awareness to low level analysis, if you wanted specific views on capacity, click on the capacity tab. You don't have to build that. It's been built for you. You can customize it further, extend it if needed, but really you're going to reuse this over and over and over again. So anyone that's looking at a network interface and that dropdown would have a list of those available, can drive a report link into this view for that interface, and everyone's on the same sheet of music. More importantly, go ahead, Brian.
On that front, I was speaking with one of our most recent customers here, last couple of weeks, and one of the biggest values that they got out of their initial few weeks of working with the platform was exactly what you just mentioned, right? Was that they had a set of out-of-the-box dashboards with I'll say these built-in tabs across the various types of personas or really use cases of why you're coming to the report, but then they could tailor it, right? And their point was, right now we actually are learning from the template right now, and then we'll evolve it as they go forward. So really big kudos to the team on the design of what was pulled together here.
Yeah, the feedback we get a lot of times is like, we try to ship out of box things that you kind of demonstrate what SevOne can do, but it typically triggers the next idea for somebody to say, "Oh, if it can do that, I have a problem it could solve over here," and see where they kind of extend around it. And that kind of goes into the shareability, is that between us with our customers, they can just export this report. We can import it in our environment. We can play around, see what they're talking about. You can share that with support people or across your organization or different tenants. And that's kind of this ecosystem of like shareability with the content that makes it kind of lethal. What I'm showing here was being able, that operational expertise we wanted to embed is I can't expect that same person that showed up, I hate to pick on that engineer one that showed up on day one, that doesn't know every KPI under the sun for every indicator. And that's not fair to expect that person to know that. But with a competent platform, you can communicate these things visually. So here I'm showing a top-end view that I'm looking at, hey, across my entire landscape for these two devices, what are the most utilized CPU cores? And I've, on this piece of content, there's color ranging behind the scenes here that I've communicated to you that if it's below 70%, it's good. It's above 70, but below 85, it's getting bad. And if it's above 90, it's a problem. And without that person needing to know that, they have this visually communicated to them, the level of severity. I don't rely on an alert or a fault. I'm just visually communicating how important or critical the indicator value is. And we're showing that in the line chart to the right here, that's showing that with goal lines, the same kind of concept. So without, just if they were to wander into a report and they'd go, all right, here's the value, is it good? That ambiguity doesn't lead to good outcomes.
Are
So
these
being able
just
to
lines,
provide
or
that.
what matters and what doesn't? I can really see why, the value of these goal lines.
Yeah, and there's just a lot of intimacy within networks that some things have like a 40-40-80 load over, a failover scheme, or some of the times you'd see, line card CPU is rated differently than the overall CPU. So really it's about 65% where the problems show up, and there could be a multitude of reasons why it's, never ever, consistent across the board. But there's confidence in knowing that I don't have to ensure every engineer or technician needs to learn those things. It's a big cognitive load. I can make sure that the people that do know those things can embed that into the platform. So if you showed up tomorrow, Brian, we're like, hey, the new version of bad is 65%. You could visually deduce this without having to know anything that, hey, behind the scenes, we're now treating this as severe, right? And just before we jump into a quick demo here, I'm really just kind of showing the breadth and depth here of a lot of our visualizations. There's a lot of ways to contextualize things or understand or summarize data, beyond line charts. So we do consistently add on to our visualization library, look at different feature sets and use cases to say what would be the best way to present this type of data or understand it. With that, we'll jump right into a quick example of me, going through kind of a high level to a low level analysis and using some of these templates and workflows to, drive outcomes, right? Pop this puppy over. So here is just like a network overview. Quick refresh. These are just some sites across the world that have all different types of, Cisco, Juniper, Arista, the Linux machines that are all over here. We're going to kick off in this surveillance mode, jump into the USA, more specifically the Northeast, and New York is now in Toronto. But when I click on New York, what I'm doing here is with this whole facet system we've really built is that you're looking at a situation where now everything else on the screen is reacting to that New York click. And I can drill down and see, all right, out of the active alerts that are in New York, 20% are critical, 24% are 20% are warning, and then error are 56%. And if we walk down on some of these, I'm seeing, discards on, an interface. Now these are blue because there's a link behind them. I can drive a report link to know more about this interface. And this interface is going to tell me, all right, I've drilled down from the network overview into the interface object summary. And it's going to take the exact interface I just came from and insert that in as a variable. So now, without having to create this content, I've gone to the interface object summary, and I'm able to kind of interact with this data, understand more of it. I can go back in time. I can take it even further. It's that these discards or errors are definitely reactive to when there's usage on there. So it needs to be usage reactive. But I could drive further into these tabs to look at specific capacity views. And when I'm looking at capacity, like maybe it's more important that I see like usage-based patterns based on like a calendar. So this is all strung together using our chaining system where I can say, all right, clearly the utilization is happening between 9 and 3 or 1500. So it's probably when people are at the office or a lunch break, and I can understand what I'm seeing in terms of time series data in more of a human construct, which would be like date and time, day of the week. Like obviously Saturdays might be less if people aren't working. So it helps me understand stuff, but really where it becomes powerful is, an interaction on this chart drives an outcome on the following chart. So there's a linkage between all these. It creates some really powerful workflow to be able to understand what's going on. And I'm showing stuff like 95th percentile on this chart. Being able to pivot really quick from max or minimum to the last value. It's all really just available. This is fully customizable. You can build this from scratch. We can walk through an example of that in a sec. But as we drive down those three tenets, capacity, availability, and even flow data, if you have it, of being able to pivot really quickly between the interface and then the applications or data that's riding over the interface between metric and flow, which is just another core competency we have with the SevOne data platform. So if now I'm at this interface level, if I wanted to drill down even further, if something piques your interest, we don't want people to have to go recreate content. They can click right on a data point and now go to a summary on that specific indicator. Now we're focused in on, all right, bits per second out on a specific interface. What's it doing? Same kind of concept where show me the alerts, high level awareness, 95th percentile, current value, and then a more detailed look. you're not really paying a price for loading this data. I mean, you're gonna, unless you click on the tab, it's not gonna load. So it's there if you need it. And you're able to provide this analytics to say, all right, the baselines are here. We can look at time over time. Is it the same as last week? Because typically when you're troubleshooting something, I'm gonna go, is that new behavior or has it always been that way, right? So providing these analytics out of the box that just kind of get us there are kind of killer. Forecasts provide, obviously an ability to take a bunch of projections and being able to say with different models, what does this look like in the future? I clearly have some data skewed here. And then going with the calendar view that we talked about, of a really cool way to be able to see this data in a weekly view, kind of a monthly view that allow you to understand that, hey, we've clearly gone down in terms of traffic, which is kind of cool. We talked about really just prefabricated reports, but if we talk about building a report, what does that look like? These are fully customizable. So as you walk through here, it's taking our entire data model and creating a really simple query builder experience where you can select a device. And if I were to select, these two routers, they're Cisco iOS XR routers, is you can jump right to, an indicator that you care about. We want to look at CPU load. And with just, that much information, the system will go behind the scenes. It'll query that indicator on those devices, and where it finds it, it'll spit it out. So real quick time to data, but now you can see this is kind of a completely customizable grid where you can add widgets, continue to add tabs, and really just decorate this data as you see fit. Being able to share this, I think, Brian, we schedule these things, to be sent out as PDFs to people's, Slack channels. I get mine via email. So in the morning, I can get a live look on how my demo environment's performing. So a place that we kind of skipped over was really that high level start where we started at a map, is what we ship out of the box is this network performance report of allowing you on day one that even if you don't know you don't have any best practices about monitoring networks, we're going to provide this to you, and it's going to give you a rank stack view to say, what are my most utilized links in this environment? And you can see here, I have a bunch of different variables up top. I could specify and be very specific to say, all right, I just want to look at the New York, edge device. It'll rerun that view just based on that one device and show me the most utilized links on there. So you can go through your entire landscape and see the most, highest throughput, the most errors, the most discards, the least available, highest latency, some basic metadata around them, right? And where you still have this ability to drill down into a device level, an object level, or an indicator level. So let's just pop into like a device level. Quick pivot, you get a holistic view on the entire device now. Same concept, high level awareness. We're going to show topology here so I can see kind of how it's connected to the rest of the network, logically, physically, so I can understand, is this on the edge for real? Is it behind the firewall? Is it in front of the firewall? And then some basic metadata around it, who to call when there's a problem. And then same kind of concepts of being able to drill down into individual data around CPUs on this memory. And we're communicating to you that if it's content on here, obviously it's relevant. So when we're shaking down a device, you guys could have a custom view. When we look at F5 firewall, we look at these key indicators, right? And I think we saw a lot of that, Brian, during the COVID environment that we shipped, really a VPN specific view because of how we saw that work from home thing really change the way
That's
data
right,
was
yeah.
flowing into corporate environments, right? So
I
went through and
think
did
back, I
that.
think as if I think back over the past year, that the ability we had back at that time with this platform, right, to enable our customers to customize what they wanted to see. I remember one customer in particular was, they were being asked by the most senior leadership in the organization, I need to see a worldwide view of what used to be work from office all become, are they able to work from home, right? And that was all about the VPN. And it's the ability to easily have access to this data. We go back to the term, of the session, right? Democratize your data. I mean, democratize your data, it really means about how do you open things up? How do you make it easy? Right? It is your data. So it's a matter of how we can make it easy for you to consume and for yourself, drill down, as Brendan's been showing you, between different types of whether it's capacity, whether it's performance, availability, down to an interface. And as we're clicking here and easily showing, I can transition days to weeks and turn into into a modern art painting is what it begins to look like after a while.
Yeah, I think what was key was during that time period with our customers of being able to export reports and be able to ship them, drop them in the Slack, and they can ingest them and say, that's perfect. It's exactly what we need of that kind of collaborative, as things popped up, it's not waiting for a new release. It's we can work through that to get there. So really proud of how it's came out, but around the theme of what we're really trying to do here is enable people on day one to be able to understand, their environment, how traffic flows across it, what kind of traffic flows across it if you have flow enabled, and really arm people that typically would have been punished by not knowing the tool well enough of being able to provide content and workflows that they can at least be, solving problems, or we say slaying dragons on day one, where they can at least respond to or have a curated workflow given to them, and then eventually build on top of it. That's really where the maturity of the platform takes it.
Yeah, I think you mentioned something earlier, Brendan, about the ability of I'll say of more senior folks being able to share their expertise, but with the folks in the beginning, right? Because it is about the issues across large complex environments don't get solved by one person, right? They get solved by a team of people, and having this common source of data, this single source of truth, as is so said, just because that much more important for to a team to also reduce that that mean time to repair. I'm thinking of Smokey, right? I'm thinking of our fire detector and the firefighter at the end, right? Depending on the use case you have, I could would hope we've shown you some of the ways that the visualization for that helps you attack those goals.
And have you carved this up in whatever variables or whatever parameters you've changed to make it look the way you think it needs to look to understand what you're trying to solve for? Is that just I can click on the URL and send it to you, Brian? You can open it and you're in the same view I'm in. So it's far more collaborative from that standpoint, instead of saying, oh, I don't have access to that report, or I don't know how to create that report, so send me a screenshot. It's like, no, go to the actual report, interact with it, right? So make the data kind of real and really use it to inform processes. I came from a company that did a really good job of baking performance data into a lot of the decision-making processes of going into a maintenance window. I knew what report to look at. Coming out of a maintenance window, I knew exactly what report I would show to prove my work. That the network is as expected, and I know it's expected because I have that data. I have it. I can prove that, which I think you end up making better decisions when they're data-driven.
Yeah,
making that data accessible is really
it's not even better. You're able to make a decision, right? When you have data you can trust, data you can easily access. It oftentimes, I would say, it takes the emotion out of making a decision, because you have something common that you're recognizing. Oh yeah, this is an issue or it's not, right? And I'll say further driving that whole democratization of data theme that we're talking about here.
Yeah, excellent, man. I mean, that's what I have, Brian. I mean, I appreciate the time of being able to tell this story. I think I'm proud of the product teams that kind of got this built out, and I think we're not really even close to done. So I look forward to where the future is going to take us.
Yeah, no, as am I. So we're folks, I appreciate you joining today. If you're with us live, again, we're happy to take any questions that you have. We'll answer those live here. But if you've come in afterwards watching us on the old I guess tape delay doesn't work anymore, does it? Everything's digital. So I'm showing my age on tape delay. I still think about, Brendan, the old 80s show Taxi. Do you ever see Taxi?
Nope.
Right? In the show Taxi, they're sitting in a bar and they're watching a Monday Night Football game. And in this game, they had a big play and they went to replay. And one of the characters gets up and goes, "Oh, replay." It goes, "In my country, we just make them do it over again." So, good thing is you can always go back in time with the data platform and see what has happened. So you don't have to do it over again. But
it's definitely a time machine.
There you go. Right, Brendan, thanks for joining today, and especially those in the audience, thanks for tuning in. And if any questions, reach out to us at SevOne.com. Thanks, everybody.